All right, checking in with folks as we get ourselves settled. I have 3 names of people who were not picked up for prayers this week. So if you didn't get a chance to pick up a name, or if you'd like to pray for 2 people, I don't want to leave these names in this basket. So I'm just going to walk down the aisle. There's one. I see Susie will take 2. And we also have the mystery of the missing sticky notes. Does anybody have sticky notes in the pews? Otherwise, I'm... All right, checking in. Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. So Lisa is coming around so that you get 2 sticky notes and something to write with. Thank you, Susie. One more name for somebody to take before we... Thank you, Anne. All right, and our moderator is on her way back. I'm going to welcome those on the live stream. Do we have the live stream running yet? Excellent. So hi to everybody who is on the live stream. I believe that you will find in the description box a link to the annual report. Also, a version of the annual report that does not have photos in case you want to print it. It's still a long document, but it gives you a little bit more flexibility. You should find a link to the agenda, to the minutes, which will be looked at in just a moment, and to a budget summary that John Walsh will be referencing when he speaks. Excellent. So here's some more sticky notes. Lisa found some of them, so we may be all set. If you would just check with her and see what she needs. Thank you so much. And we will begin in just a moment. Those of you who are in the room, if you received the e-blast this morning, you will also find links to those same documents in your email. So they are at your fingertips, as well as are having hard copies available to you. All right, here comes our moderator.
Good morning again, church. I feel like I'm taking off one hat and I'm putting on another one. Would you please take a deep and spirit-filled breath with me as we open this annual meeting? And one more. I called this meeting of our annual meeting for the Saugatuck Congregational Church open. I'm going to invite our pastor, Allison, to come up and open us with prayer.
Join your hearts with mine. Holy One, we trust that wherever we go, you are already there to meet us. And so meet us in this space as we take up the business of being your faith-filled community. Bless our conversation, bless our speaking and our listening, bless our discerning. Help us to hear the ways that you are calling us to participate in your healing, justice-seeking, love-overflowing mission in the world. We ask it in all things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from our last annual meeting, from the 2021 annual meeting. I know that, Sarah, we have copies of those minutes available, and I just want to give heartfelt thanks to Sarah Walsh for having prepared those for us and for being our faithful clerk for the past 2 years. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as provided? Janet? A prior clerk moving that we approve them with gratitude. Is there a second? Bob, thank you very much. Bob Mitchell is seconding. Is there any discussion?
Before we move to the vote, I just wanted to acknowledge for those who are on the live stream that we have Lisa Tantillo and Bob Mitchell monitoring the live stream, so that if you are a member online, you are invited to vote by putting a yes or a no or an abstain in the chat, and they will see your response. Likewise, if you have a question or a comment, please put it in the chat, and Bob or Lisa will convey that to us. Sorry for the interruption, but
Very
thank you.
important. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of moving the minutes to be approved as presented, please indicate by raising your hands. And I'm asking for those who are participating online, if you would just so note on either Facebook or YouTube. We have people monitoring that as well. But based on the votes that we have here, are there any who are not approving those minutes? I see none. The minutes are approved. Again, with gratitude, thank you so much to Sarah. We now have a show. This is going to be a theme. I really do appreciate that Craig Patton has put together a slideshow, kind of our year in review, as you were. So if you just turn your attention to the screen that's here in front of us. you, Craig and Allison and all who contributed to the slideshow. As somebody who's had to do these myself, it's hours of work to provide you with that wonderful visual reminder of what we've done together this year. Friends, I stand before you today with a heart filled with gratitude, and not just because today I retire as moderator. I was a little worried when I didn't see Bruce in service at the beginning of that. I'm just going to say it. Last year at this time, I was looking forward to the day when we would gather in our meeting house. And here we are. I am so grateful. It's worth taking a few minutes to remember the kind of year that we've had. The spread of COVID-19 changed how we could gather, and so we adapted. We met on Zoom, and then we live streamed our worship services. As weather permitted, we gathered outside to worship, to plan, to study, and just to be together. Our ability to be responsive to the ever-changing nature of the pandemic was due to Pastor Allison's visionary leadership. I really want to emphasize that, and I have to just say thank you. We were able to do what we did because she saw where we were going, and she will tell you it was because she was watching what others were doing, but she was watching, she was doing it. I have shared with you, I just wanted to put my head under the covers and hide, but Allison didn't, and I am forever grateful for that. And so, wisely, she also said, but I need help. And she found help in the Phasing Forward team. And so with their guidance, we figured out how to move forward, how to take a step back, and then how to keep moving forward. As vaccination rates increased and the infection rates fluctuated and eventually decreased, we've returned in person to this space for worship, and we've opened our facilities for our other users. Yay. First fully masked and now mask optional. And today, at the end of the meeting, we will sing together. Yay! I am very excited about this. I don't even know what song we're singing, and it doesn't matter, because we will finally be able to lift our voices together. And again, I am grateful. Our generosity campaign's theme this year is rooted in love, and it is so appropriate. David Cross and Bob Mitchell tapped into a fundamental truth about us. God's Spirit and love infuse everything we do here at Saugatuck Church. The pandemic impacted how we were able to be the church, but it did not stop our ministry and did not stop us from sharing God's love in the world. With the gift of a generous angel and untold volunteer hours, we were able to install a state-of-the-art audiovisual system that enhances our experience in this room, Hoskins Hall, and even outdoors, and which also allows us to reach far beyond our church walls. We benefit, friends who have moved benefit, our user groups benefit, and we have a wonderful resource that we can share with the whole community. My heart is overflowing with gratitude. Saugatuck's generosity and care for others continued to be extended throughout the year, adapting as needed to the changing circumstances. We made meals for the Gillespie Center and for each other. We donated food and coats. We gave money for McGivney camperships. We gifted families through our angel tree. And we restocked the supplies at the Domestic Violence Center with our Christmas Eve donations at the manger. This is to name just a few. There's a full list, and I thank Alexandra, who's at the back, for all of her work on our mission team, along with her co-chair and the rest of her board. There's a full list, though, on page 26 and 27 of the annual report for all of the work that was done by the missions board and you. Thank you again for your generosity. But today, more than ever, we need to be taking care of each other as well. In my role, I hear from all of you, one way or the other. And I'm going to stand before you being completely candid. These last 2 years have exhausted me. Not by being moderator. That is not what was exhausting. What is exhausting is a pandemic that didn't abate quickly. What is exhausting is seeing how exhausted everybody else is and not being able to do anything to help. I hope you all know this, but I love you all dearly, and it is painful to see how hard these last 2 years have been. That said, I know that I can come to church not to be exhausted, but to be filled. And that's what you all have done for me. I am inspired every morning by a quotation that is curated by our very own Michael Hendricks. If you are not on this email list, you can sign up on the website. You can give Michael your email. He will add you to the list. It is my morning boost, just to remember why I want to get through my day with a little bit more energy. And I am grateful for that. And it is because I'm a part of this church that I know Michael Hendricks, and that I know Art Scholler, that I know Sarah, that I know Kitty, that I know Priscilla, that I know all of you, and you all are part of that boost. And I am so grateful for that. There's also weekly prayer time that's led by Anne. There's Bible study. There's voices. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being there to lift us up between those Sundays so that church isn't just a once a week or twice a year experience. Church, for me, it's how I live. It's how I want to move through the world. I want to be sharing God's love, but I can't do it alone. I need your support, and I'm so glad that I can come here and have that. Speaking of, looking ahead, there is a women's retreat next weekend, and I am so excited, in case you hadn't noticed. This was originally planned for 2 years ago, March 2020, the theme being finding joy in every season. Could it be any more appropriate? We have a high school mission trip. I tell you, this is just like my top 10 favorites that I'm rolling out here for you. We have a mission trip going to Maine in June. I could not be more excited about that. And the clergy renewal team is making plans for us to have time to have activities to renew our spirits and affirm our commitment to the environment, to each other, and just to the world, just being grounded in the real world. So 2022 is going to be a time for continued healing and rebuilding. We need to recover as individuals and do our part to help a healing world. If we haven't told you enough yet about voices, let me tell you one more thing. On Thursday, when we listened to the chapter, one of the quotations that was pulled out, actually it was highlighted by Joanne, so I'm going to call her out because she's the one who called it out in the Thursday night group. One of the quotations used by Barbara Brown Taylor was from the Talmud. And it says, every blade of grass has an angel bending over it whispering, grow, grow. I love that image. I love that image. And then, of course, Michael took it just that extra step further and said, wouldn't it be wonderful if as a church we were whispering in each other's ears, grow, grow. That's what you all do for me. Thank you for watching me grow. Thank you for helping me grow and helping me to be just a little bit closer to who I've been created to be. This is truly holy work. There is no better place to do it than at Saugatuck Church with you. And again, I am so grateful to be here with you. Amen. Okay. Aw, thank you. So the past moderator stands up. I love that. Allison, would you please join me up here? Or down there.
So Kim has reminded us more than once of the importance of being on. Am I on? There we go. The importance of our reconnecting with one another. Some of us have been hanging out on Zoom together for the last 2 years, but haven't gotten to see one another in 3 dimensions until recently. Others have not had even that opportunity. And so I want to take a few minutes today to hold space for us to connect with each other. You have, I hope, each of you, 2 sticky notes and something to write with. If you are online, you have the chat, or if you are gathered with anybody else in your own home, you might grab a couple of pieces of paper. In a moment, here's what I want to invite you to do. I'd like you to pair up. And if we have an uneven number, 3 is okay. Find someone who's not a member of your own household, and we're going to take about 5 minutes to share the responses to 2 questions. What is one thing that has given you joy in recent months? And what is one thing that is routinely on your mind? What is one thing that has given you joy in recent months? And what is one thing that has routinely given you joy? Friends who are joining us online, I tried to think of a way to connect you with those in the room and maybe have you call each other, and I couldn't quite work it out. So I invite you to share your response to those questions in the chat and hopefully to chat a little bit with each other online. Those of you who are here in the space, once you've shared with each other, I'm going to give you each about 3 minutes. So when you're in the listening posture, just be listening, hear the response to those 2 questions, or you can do one at a time, and then swap. I'll let you know when we're about halfway through. And then I do want you to note a version of your responses on your 2 sticky notes, because we're going to put them up on the wall at the end of the conversation. You don't need to have your names on them, but I'm hoping just for a little bit of a sense of the flavor of your conversation. So one thing that, do you remember what it is? Gives you joy. And one thing that is on your mind a lot, right? Is on your mind a lot these days, routinely these days. Go ahead and stand up if you need to. Find a buddy, and we'll take about 6 minutes, 3 for each. So we're about halfway through, believe it or not. So make sure you're swapping stories. So that was, am I on? That was 6 minutes, believe it or not. When you come to the end of your thought, I'm going to invite you to stretch your legs or designate one of you. You don't both need to get up. But I would like you to come over to the wall over the baptismal. I need 2 sticky notes. I know they were all over. Where did some of the sticky notes go? Sticky notes that are unwritten, I mean, blanks. I need 2 blank sticky notes. Here we go. All right. So, 2. Thank you. Yes. All right, in just a moment. Exactly. I heard that. Come on back. If you would designate somebody to come on forward and share your sticky notes. On one wall, there's a little sticky note that says joy. You can stick your joy sticky notes there. And Natalie has pointed out that where I said, what's on your mind, it's under the fire alarm. So, but don't read anything into that. Whatever is on your mind, put those sticky notes on that wall. So this is your excuse to stretch your legs for a second. You can designate somebody if you don't want to walk forward yourself. But just go ahead and pop them on the 2 walls right here. Oh, I see. Yep. Joy on that wall. What's on your mind on this wall? Exactly. Here we go. Joy's over the baptismal font.
On your mind is the fire.
On your mind is under the fire alarm. Excellent. Thank you. And while you're putting up the sticky notes, you can notice some of the other comments that are made. You might also look at them on your way out at the end of the meeting. We'll leave them there for the moment. Joy goes over the baptismal font. What's on your mind goes under the fire alarm. And once you have done that, you can go back and find your seats. I have too many things. Oh, there it is. Hey, Jim. All right. Lisa and Bob, you may have done this automatically, and I didn't ask you, but if there was anything that came up in the chat that you want to add, I see Bob putting some things up. Bob and Lisa, if anything came up in the chat and you haven't already done so, feel free to add them to sticky notes and pop them up on the wall when you have a moment. I'm doing my announcement next year.
Yep.
Yeah, well, we So I want to take a moment now to share an announcement with you all on behalf of the personnel team and the leadership team, and on my own behalf. I am delighted to share the news that Liangfeng Chang recently accepted our invitation yes, to serve as the director of music ministries at Saugatuck Church. She has been, yes, she has been, Liang Feng agreed to come in as an interim in the fall when we needed an accompanist. And we knew that she was a gifted pianist. And we knew that she lived right next door. And we said, cool, this is going to work out while we search for that permanent position of Director of Music Ministries. What we didn't know at the time is how Liang Feng would bring her heart and spirit to this place with such enthusiasm, how she would take up the reins, take the initiative, share her creativity and her curiosity, how she would learn every day something more about this church. The list of things that she didn't know about church is long. I had no idea. She confessed to me after Christmas that she'd never played all those Christmas hymns before, y'all. She learned them all for us, to help us celebrate Christmas. She had the privilege of hanging out with Cameron Carpenter on Friday during the afternoon, hosted him all afternoon as he got oriented to our organ, and I think picked up a couple of tips along the way. We've had the pleasure of getting to know Max and Sabrina, and we have loved having them in our midst. And so really it is with great joy that I get to announce that Liang Feng has said yes to sticking around with us. Thank you for her warm welcome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, you want to say something? Do I have it? Where's our microphone? Boop. Go ahead. Use your. Thank you. Button.
I just want to say thank you to all of you to being so friendly, so loved to me and to my children. I want to thank Alison for the endless patience to teach me and guide me through all the literature and to the service process. I'm just clueless. I want to thank our worship planning team. They know I really don't know. I want to thank my musical team, Susie and Julia, that they all work very well together and support us to go through each Sunday service. My children always talk very honestly. So I want to share a very short thing. Like right after first or second times they came to the church and we were driving home and they were saying, the people there are really nice. And I was like, yes. And also last Friday night, the Cameron Carpenter, the organist visit, we had huge crowd audience. And when I drove into the parking lot, I came with Maxwell, and he said, there are many cars. I never seen so many cars, even when you play on Sunday. And it was a great night, and also when I was sitting upstairs, I saw so many possibilities with everyone here and with the resource here. So thank you for this opportunity that allows me to settle, to breathe, to practice, and to dream bigger. And I'm sure with all this together, we can make this happen and make it come true. Thank you.
One of the things that is written into Liang Feng's job description is to be engaging all ages in music experience at Saugatuck Church. You've seen her doing that already, and we look forward to more opportunities for our young people and our adult gifted musicians to be participating in the life and music of Saugatuck Church.
I'd like to invite Bob Mitchell and David Cross to come forward for the stewardship report. I have no flowers for you, I understand. Not because they're bouquets, my bouquets are my gratitude.
Thank you. So you all have in your programs on page 28, our report. So the report's brief, will be brief. First off, I'd like to thank, the campaign this year was Rooted in Love, and I would like to thank Lisa Feistel and Judy Puchowski and Leslie Hand, I think I got everybody there, who took the time to witness for us and say how important having Saugatuck being, rooted in their lives has helped them. Getting down to the nitty-gritty, we wrote this report. Bob will tell you it's sometimes a little difficult to get financial information out of Power Church as to who's donated and who hasn't donated. That's actually been his main thing, is keeping the Excel sheets together. So there's a lag in information. But when we wrote this report on February 18th, we'd had pledges of about $255,000 from 49 different people. There were some pledge commitments we were still waiting to come in. We figured it'll probably end up being about $280,000 for pledges. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that the pledge fulfillment for the year before was actually higher than the pledge level. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, when I came to the church years ago, the church didn't have computers and I didn't have a cell phone. So, you know, everything was, I didn't anyway, it wasn't like I was alone. Nobody had a cell phone in 1992. So, you think back to those. But we were always worried about everybody meeting their pledge. It's interesting, the world's kind of changed. People come in, they make pledges mid-year, they'll sometimes over-donate. So it was interesting that last year, actually, the pledges came in higher for the people who pledged than the pledges they made. So keep that up. Also, it's interesting, we had for the 49 pledges, 23 members actually increased their pledges, and we got 6 new pledges. So, you know, it's interesting. And then, unfortunately, on the flip side, there were 20 people who pledged last year who have not pledged year to date.
Yeah, I don't see any of them in here, of course.
If we did, we'd point them out.
We put them on the screen.
We put the as part of our slideshow. So, and you can see in the report, you know, it's you know, and you can see there's several people, 3 people whose pledges are over 20,000. You know, and this is actually fairly typical of churches, that there's several folks who are the big donors. It goes that way. So, anyway, so we can spend a lot of time talking about, is it 255, is it 280? But I think the theme you've heard so far is not how do you get it to 280 or 300, but how do you get it back to 400 or 500 or 600? And that's from growing the church.
Yep.
So let's, what was that? Grow over the grave. So thank you all for your support in this past year, and that's our report.
Thank George for that.
Oh yes, I'm sorry, thank you. I also want to thank George Wargo for his help, very instrumental in putting out all of our materials and our graphics and our cards. Couldn't do it without him, and we couldn't do it without you all.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob and David. And just a reminder that generosity is not something that we just do in the fall. Generosity is something that we can do all year round, and I am so grateful for Bob and for David just leading us in this campaign and for reminding us about how we are rooted in love and that love is all year round. Come on up, John. I was just trying to fill the time as you were providing us with our financial report is one of our trustees, John Walsh. We will have the report, the proposed budget, and then questions following.
All of that.
All of that.
And John, your budget summary is on the back of the agenda for those who are looking for it.
Did you put that up, Allison?
I don't know whether they are set to put it on the screen.
Well, I don't need it up right now.
But
so.
it is, everybody has it on the back of your agenda.
Does anybody need one?
You will find a copy of the summary that looks like this.
Don't get tied up in the numbers. I will try to take you through an overview of the numbers that perhaps makes them a little simpler. Don't get tied up. For those of you who want more numbers, we have more numbers, but hopefully we can spare you that. Just a little bit of, a recap. I think, to talk about the past year and to say it was a challenge would be probably the grossest of understatements and misrepresentation of everything that went through. You look at all of the stops, the starts, the changes in direction. It was a challenge. And it certainly flowed through in terms of the building here. Our building never really closed. But I think, as all of you know, there were times when we weren't gathering together, and that held true with our outside groups. A lot of the outside groups, they didn't come. We did have the nursery school, Ableist. They were able to operate no, for the full year. They operated under very strict conditions because they are governed by state guidelines. So their guidelines and their protocols were more stringent than what we had in place. But they were able to operate for most of the year. So that was really encouraging. The other thing, you'd be amazed at the persistence of the number of 12-step groups that we have here. They wanted to meet. They didn't all want to meet in person. Some of them did Zooms, but a number of them met here during the year. At times they met in the parking lot. They met in the garden when they couldn't meet in the building. So that was really inspiring to see the dedication of these groups and how important having a place to go, having something that they could call community is to those groups. Just a word about maintenance. I think we've learned that empty buildings, closed buildings don't do well. So even though we had a lot less usage of the building, we had to do the regular maintenance. I think I mentioned a year ago we upgraded the air filtration. We added what is the CDC recommended MERV 13 air filters. So those are in place, and I think that gives us some comfort that we're doing what we can to improve the airflow in a building that we know is old, but parts of the building, like the air conditioning, are relatively new because of the fact that we had the fire and we had the rebuild. So a lot of our infrastructure is relatively new when you think about a 180-year-old building. From a financial standpoint, the year was pretty good. We had entered the year anticipating that we would have a budget deficit of about $28,000. As we went through the year, we had less building usage. So we didn't have all of the wear and tear that we might typically have in a normal year. The other thing is that we got lucky. We didn't have any bad storms. We didn't have any major power failures, although we lost power at our house yesterday. I don't know whether anybody else did. We lost power yesterday afternoon. But we didn't have any major power failures. We didn't have any lightning strikes. So we didn't have anything that really ripped up the infrastructure and blew out some of our electronics and caused us major repairs. That was a blessing, probably something as we go forward that we can't always bank on. But we ended up the year, we spent less on repairs. I think you all know we had some staff vacancies during the year, so we spent less on staff vacancies. And we had a PPP loan that we were granted through the Small Business Association, as part of the CARES Act. That was $55,000. So that was a bonus to us. So we had a cash position that was stronger because of the PPP loan and because of the underspending on repairs, the underspending on staff because of the vacancies. So we made a conscious decision at the end of the year not to take the full amount of the draw from the endowment. We said it's better to leave that money in. Despite what's happened in the beginning of this year, it's better to leave that money invested in with our United Church Fund, who handles our investments. So we didn't take that because we didn't need the cash. So if you look at the numbers, we ended up with a budget deficit of $70,000, but that's on a reported basis. We had cash, and if you put the $55,000 in there, and you put some of the underspending in there, we were basically operating at a break-even position. And that's pretty much the way we would like it to be, and that's how it ended up. If you go on to look at our budget for 2022, I think there are a couple of things to bear in mind. Probably the most important is the last 2 years we have benefited from these PPP loans. We got one in 2020. That has now been forgiven. We received another one in 2021. We filed the paperwork to have it forgiven. Hasn't been forgiven yet, but we fully expect that it will be, similar to what was the case in 2020. But we won't have that going forward. So that's $55,000 that you got to kind of put out there and say, we don't have that luxury in our planning. So as we looked at our expenses, what were the key assumptions that we made? The key assumptions, first of all, it centers on exactly what David and Bob were talking about. What's our pledge income going to be? We have built in our budget that our pledge income would be pretty much what it has been the last couple of years. And that's been around $290,000. I think David and Bob mentioned a number that is slightly less than that now in terms of what we have in hand. But I think our experience of the last few years says that we will probably bring that number in and maybe be a little bit ahead. So we feel reasonably confident that that's a good number. But does it represent a risk? Of course it does. The other thing in terms of assumptions is how did we look at expenses? We have projected expenses will be up probably in the vicinity of 10% year to year. Now that's a function of two things. One is our spending this past year was lower than what we would anticipate. We had the staff vacancies. We didn't have the unusual situation with regard to some of the repairs that has been our history over the years. We don't think we can assume that going forward. Plus, we all know what is happening with inflation, with oil prices pushing whatever number, $120 a barrel. Inflation is going to impact us. There's no question it'll start to ripple through. And I think if there is a risk in our budget, it may be that we haven't anticipated enough inflation in there. What we've assumed is a normal year that would kind of go back to what we'd experienced the last couple of years as our usage picks up and build in 3%. Now we're looking at probably a number that will be significantly higher than that as we go forward. So where do we end up? We end up with expenses about $539,000, income $482,000, and we know that our income comes from three sources. I mentioned the $290 in pledge income. We get about $60,000 from maintenance donations. The people who use our facilities, like the nursery school, like Ableist, all make maintenance contributions to us. And then we've got an endowment transfer, and we've anticipated that we would have what we've typically had, which is a 5% draw out of the endowment. Now this year we did less than half of that. You'd like to think you could be lucky in a year from now and draw less than the 5%, but we are planning on the 5%. And that leaves us with a budget deficit of about $57,000 as we go into the year. Nobody likes to stand before a group and say, we're planning to lose money. That's not a good situation. How do we manage that? I think what we do is we're prudent in terms of how we spend our money. We watch our cash position. We hope we get, as we go through the year, that our cash is sufficient. If our cash isn't sufficient at any point in time, we're in a reasonable position in terms of reserves that have been built up over many, many years with a lot of careful planning, a lot of caution and conservatism, so that we have a maintenance reserve that totals about $400,000. We have an operating surplus, which is probably misnamed, but it's money that has been built up in good years to set aside for years that may not be quite so good. So that's another $100,000. So we've got close to $500,000 that we could tap into if need be. Plus the fact we have an endowment. We have a rather healthy endowment. It's 8% less healthy than it was at the end of the year, but it's still, at $2.7 million, it is a very healthy endowment for a church of our size. So as I look at the budget, $57,000 deficit does not make me comfortable. Can we manage it? We will figure out a way to manage it as we go through the year. But what I will say today is, perhaps I've said in previous years, we got to get a handle on it. You can't continue to operate with an operating deficit every year, and the reserves won't be reserves forever if you have to tap into them. And the reserves were built up with good purpose. The maintenance reserve was built up if we have a problem with the steeple, if we eventually have to resurface the parking lot. You know, major repairs, not there to manage the everyday expenses of running the church. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to take these budget deficits seriously and say, we got to figure out a way. Expense reductions, they're hard to come by. They're very hard to come by. We've been squeezing expenses out of this church for years where you can. You have to grow. You have to grow the membership. You have to grow the revenue. That is the only way that you sustain any kind of a business, whether it's a church or you're selling widgets or whatever you're selling. You've got to grow the revenue. So I would say, as I've tried to emphasize, I think the budget is realistic. It has risk, but I think the risks are manageable. And before I either put you to sleep or make you very nervous about my doom and gloom message, which I don't really intend it to be doom and gloom, I think you have to step back and say, you know, churches aren't designed to make money. Churches are designed to build community, to serve people, to save souls, to do all of these wonderful things. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. You have to manage a budget because we have expenses, and you have to figure out how you're going to work you through that. But as I said, this church is blessed with many financial assets that don't even reflect all of the intangibles that go along with that. The endowment, the reserves, that's over $3 million. So I think we should take comfort in the fact that there's a healthy financial background there, but it comes with a caveat that you got to figure out how to eliminate that deficit going forward. The other thing I would leave you with is just the thought that, you know, as a trustee, it's our job to manage the building, to manage the numbers, and numbers do not always tell the story. Numbers don't reflect all of the good work that is done at Saugatuck Church every day. Numbers don't reflect the 35 or so 2-, 3-, and 4-year-olds that are here 5 days a week at the nursery school. They don't reflect the fact that we open our doors to Ableist, and we're working with 15 or so developmentally challenged young adults every single day. They don't reflect the impact of our work and just opening up our space with the 12-step groups who care enough about each other, who care enough about their own health and well-being, that they're willing to sit out in the parking lot when they can't come in the building. Or the Wisemen who just returned here last Thursday. The Westport Young Women's League who meets here on a regular basis, and all of the good work that they do. Boy Scouts. You could go on and on about the work that is done here, not all of it done by us, but we provide the space, we provide a community home for these people, and they view it as such. I wish the numbers could tell that story. I'm not gifted enough to be able to figure out how to do that, but I think all of us should take comfort in the fact that there's a lot more that goes on here than just reporting of the numbers. So I would leave you with that and two thoughts. Let's pay attention to the deficit, but let's not get doom and gloom hanging over us in terms of that, because there is so much good that goes on here that isn't reflected in the numbers. So with that, I will turn it back to Kim. Oh, questions? Questions on the 2021, on the budget, on?
John, I have just one quick question about, that actually pertains to that wonderful list you just lifted up of all of the other participants in our building. Prior to the pandemic, so back 2018, 2019, do you recall what we were bringing in terms of maintenance donations?
At its peak, we were bringing in about $90,000, and I was comfortable saying it was moving to $100,000 with people that we were talking to. It's now 60. I think it will build back over time. One of the big groups that, I won't say we've lost them, but they're not back, is the Come Play Bridge group, who are meeting here on a regular basis. It varied. They were here 3 days a week. Some weeks they were here 4, and they had a big following. They came back for a short while last year. We're talking to them. They're hopeful they will come back, but they're not certain they will. They have some challenges with the group that was playing, and they just didn't have enough people that were willing to come out and sit in a room and 4 people at a table and very close, and and it didn't work so well on Zoom, so they've got some issues that they're working with. We hope they'll come back. But there are new groups. And there are groups who use our building that, we just welcome them in. The Westport Superintendent of Schools, he has his monthly staff meeting here. 45 people connected to the school system in various ways. They meet here for 2.5 hours on the second Tuesday of Tuesday or Thursday? Thursday, second Thursday of the month. So that's a group that we just welcome into the building, and we don't charge them unless we have to go out of pocket. And so this is a community space that is well used, and we hope to be able to build the revenue up. But I think we've got to recognize that we are limited in terms of how many groups can you have here. We're not a conference center. We're a church first and foremost. So we welcome them in when they make sense, and hopefully their missions are compatible with what we want to be as a church. Long answer to your question, Allison.
Thank you, John. I have the microphone if anybody else has questions.
Sure.
Yes. So before you is the proposed budget from your Board of Trustees. Because it's coming to you as a board motion, we don't need it to be nominated, but I just need to take the vote. So, all in favor of approving the budget as proposed, please raise your hands. Any opposed? On the chat, do we have anybody indicating? Okay, good. The budget passes with tremendous gratitude to John and to the trustees.
Thank you. Let me just acknowledge my colleagues on trustees, Andrea Cross, Carl Lehman, Ben Mann, and Judy Pachowski as ex officio member as treasurer. So gratitude to them.
Thank you, John. Take a deep breath. We're almost there. We're almost there. Words of appreciation.
I love words of appreciation.
I do too.
So much gratitude.
So we're going to bounce back and forth.
Okay. Outstanding.
Did you want to go first?
Sure.
Or do you want me to go first?
I do one, you do one?
Yes.
Okay. So,
We rehearsed.
so gratitude this afternoon for Kitty Coyne, and we've already mentioned Leon Fung, our two newest staff members who said yes to us during a pandemic.
Yes.
Deep gratitude to both of them for the gifts that they have brought to this community. Gratitude also to Sandy Young, who is not here in the room with us, but who has done a ton of work behind the scenes, including working with trustees and with John and with Judy to prepare the financials that we have just discussed. So deep gratitude to Sandy Young and our entire Saugatuck staff.
As John just mentioned, Judy Pachowski agreed to be our treasurer in the midst of a pandemic. And she's joining us via the live stream this morning. Hey, Judy. And I want to express my heartfelt thanks for her efforts to work with our trustees and our bookkeeper to gather and review our financial information. So thank you for that ongoing effort.
In addition to our full-time staff, we have with us this year Natalie Owens-Pike, our ministry intern, who not only said yes to us during a pandemic, but has continued to say yes to us and is going to join us this summer in a new position as the pastoral coverage during my sabbatical and what we're calling our renewal leader. So thank you, Natalie, for all that you have brought to the community.
I mentioned earlier that we've been working with a phasing forward team that Allison convened 2 years ago now, and I just want to say thank you to Bruce Borner, Doug Johnston, Bob Mitchell, and John Walsh for helping shape Saugatuck's actions this past year as we moved wave to wave to stay active and engaged. And as well, while we were trying to follow the latest CDC guidelines and local safety guidelines. Heartfelt gratitude for your dedication and for your care.
I want to thank our new and growing clergy renewal implementation team, the folks that have been working with us to prepare for my sabbatical in June through August and for your season of renewal in my absence. And that team includes Priscilla Long, Aaron Cancrow, John Canning, recently joined Linda Yingling, Bruce Borner, and I think we have one more that has helped me, and Susie Benton, our newest yes.
woohoo.
Thank you so much for leaning into this invitation. It's such a gift, and for us to get to not only send me away for a few months to do some rest and renewal, but also hold space for you all to take a deep and spirit-filled breath and find ways to embrace our coastal community. I am so grateful for that implementation team. Thanks to all of you.
It would be hard to overstate how much we are guided by the wisdom of John Walsh. And so to take a moment just to say thank you to John, not only for his leadership on trustees, but also for stepping in and picking up a larger role to be the primary contact for our user groups. In terms of growing that one prong of our three-legged stool, that is largely due to the efforts that John has really put out there and for the excellent response he gives to those user groups so they really feel connected to us. So John, you wear many hats as well, but thank you for this one as well.
I want to add to that a word of gratitude for Suzanne Reich and BMOCT. BMOCT is the company that cares for our building, and Suzanne has sort of taken the lead, working with John to host some of those groups, doing some of the behind-the-scenes preparations, managing our calendar, in addition to the work that they've been doing throughout the pandemic to keep our building clean and safe. So deep gratitude to Suzanne and all the folks at BMOCT. And then thank you to Sarah Walsh, Mark Mathias, Bruce Borner, in the early going stages, Heather Hamilton, for their work to install our new AV system. We've been working on it all year. We are still tweaking the system, and it is all thanks to their hard work, their many hours, and their collaboration with DNR, the company that has installed the system. So much gratitude to them for the work they have done.
Jumping off from that, we have an AV ministry team comprised of people very near and dear to our hearts. Craig Patton, Mark Mathias, with the able assistance that, because of course we're trying to get the youth involved in this as well, so gratitude to both Lucas and to Gleb for joining them and learning a little bit more about the AV system and sound system. So thank you for all that you do to make sure we are broadcast far and wide.
Thank you. This is a thank you by way of an announcement. In conversation with council over the last month or so, I have asked that we establish a new advisory team to help to oversee our relationship with Yale Divinity School and Andover Newton. We have a small dedicated fund that helps to cover the costs of having our ministry interns, and some of those funds go back to Yale to support their ongoing work. John Canning serves on the board of Andover Newton at Yale, and joining him, Joan Kavanaugh and Joanne Lehman. So it's the derivatives, John, Joanne, and Joan. You have to have a variation on that name to be part of this team, which has graciously agreed to help to steward those funds and our relationship with the seminary, which we have come to so cherish as we have benefited from the relationship with interns over these several years. So thank you to Joanne, Joan, and John for saying yes to that team.
If there's a Johan or a Johanna in the room,
That's right.
we're coming for you.
We're after you.
People near and dear again to my heart, Rebecca Ross and Michael Hendricks have continued to move forward with our high school youth group. And it's not been easy, folks. I mean, it's tough because first they were meeting on Zoom, which was hard with the kids because they'd already been online. Now they came back. First they were meeting outside. Now they're meeting. They've adapted. And you know how teens adapt. Those of us who are hanging out with teens, sometimes not so easy. But they did it. They've grown it. They've kept it solid. We appreciate all that you've done. Love to Rebecca for bringing her creativity. Love to Michael for bringing us quotations and helping all of them to think just a little bit more deeply and to talk about things they don't get to talk about anywhere else. So thank you, much appreciated.
I don't know that Michael intended to do this, but somewhere in the last couple of years, he became one of our core leaders for adult faith formation, carrying some of his insights from working with young people into spaces with the rest of us. So I want to thank Michael again for establishing what has become the Voices small group and for putting out those quotes every morning that Kim mentioned, and in other ways, seeding this community with insights that have fed our spirits along the way, and holding space for us to hear one another's voices. I also want to thank both Michael and the Reverend Willie Salmond for stepping into the pulpit on occasion to preach for us and bring their gifts to our worshiping community. Deep gratitude to both of them.
I promise we are almost done. I really do promise. If you have one of these annual reports, I hope you are holding it, and it is beautiful, and we have Lisa Tantillo to thank for the creation of this amazing annual report. We are blessed with many creative people in this congregation, and we just are grateful for all the different ways that they share their talents, but thank you, Lisa, for this. One of the other things that's a little off script.
It's good, because I have off script over here too.
Actually,
so
you can go first.
I go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Are we still on gratitudes?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in addition to Lisa's creative work, Linda Agan has stepped up and done a number of things with our bulletin and our e-blasts over the course of these last few months, bringing her marketing skills. And now Lisa is also lending a hand with the bulletin in our time of transition. So to all of those, and particularly Lisa and Linda, who are helping us to be communicating with each other, a big thank you.
Yes.
One more thank you in the way of an announcement. Some of you heard us say last Sunday when we interviewed Ramin Ganeshram that the Westport Museum of History and Culture has graciously stepped in to help us to archive our resources, all of our documents here at Saugatuck Church, and we are in the process of formalizing that relationship. And I am so super excited, and they are incredibly excited to be able to step out on that journey with us and discover what we have and make sure that it is preserved for the future. So I just would like the minutes to reflect that new relationship with the Westport Museum. And finally, on my list is this woman. And also the gentleman at the back of the room,
Yes.
who doubles as our photographer, Mr. Bruce Borner. Bruce Borner and Kim Mathias had no idea. They had no idea when they said yes to these two roles exactly what was in store for them. And I cannot say thank you enough for the ways that you kept showing up, even when you didn't want to, even when you were completely worn out. We were all there, and we bore each other up, and when one couldn't, the other did, and that's how we work in community. So heartfelt gratitude to Bruce and to our moderator, Kim Mathias. Okay, now I'm done.
Anybody who's been part of a congregational church knows that it's not the moderator who does the heavy lifting, but it's all the people on the boards. And we are saying goodbye to some people from their roles, and this is just our opportunity to say thank you to you. So, Bob Yingling, thank you for your service as a member at large. Thank you to Melissa Banks and to Michelle Daria for their service on missions. Thank you to Karen Kim and to Leslie Hand for your service on the Board of Christian Education. And if I've missed anybody else who thinks they're leaving a board,
You don't get
because
to.
you're not.
Yeah, sorry. Nancy Wargo.
Nancy Wargo is, yes, Nancy Wargo is stepping
She's
back-
migrating.
Back from Deacons, but she's elevating. It's promotion.
Yeah.
It's a promotion. We're telling her it's a promotion. Yeah, she'll be joining us as vice moderator. So thank you to all of those folks for their service. So are we going to move on to nominations? Are we going to bring people up here to do nominations?
We'll vote on them and then bring them up. Yes.
So I really want to say thank you to Ken and Michael and Art and Susie and Joanne, and I'm missing people, but it is such a gift that we have confirmation class again this year, and I'm truly grateful for all the work that you're doing with our children. Awesome.
It's a gift to us.
Any others like that? Then I suggest that we present the slate and
Yes.
vote, and then invite folks forward for a blessing.
I think that's a great idea.
And we have one person to add to the slate.
We do. This is exciting news. We're adding, first of all, if you have the annual meeting report that has a B on it, you have the correct slate. If you don't have a B on the front, you don't have the correct slate, and so I will tell you what the changes are.
The B is just at the bottom of the cover. It says 2021 annual report. Then there's a little gray B. You all in the room should have that
You
newest one.
probably
ones
have the newest one.
Last week, we just updated.
So, because our members at large, well, let me just go through the whole group. Your moderator will be Bruce Borner. Your vice moderator will be Nancy Wargo. Treasurer, Judy Pucholsky. Clerk, Susie Benton. Members at large, Sarah Walsh and Priscilla Long. Your Board of Deacons will be Doug Johnston, Ari Lee, Ann Patterson, Mark Meyer, Kathy Griffin, and Joan Kavanaugh. Board of Trustees, Ben Mann, John Walsh, Carl Lehman, Andrea Cross, with Judy Pucholsky continuing ex officio as treasurer. Board of Missions will be Alexandra Walsh and Nancy Hallis. Board of Christian Education, Kim Mathias, Michael Hendricks, Irene Similchev. This is the new one. Welcome in membership, joining Holly Betts, Paul Betts, and Kirk Bogdan will be Lisa Tantillo. And stewardship, David Cross and Bob Mitchell. That is your slate for the coming year. It's being presented to you by your council. I don't need to take because it's being presented by council, we don't need it to be nominated. So are there any questions or anybody to add to the list? Anybody want to volunteer? Okay, well, I thought I'd ask. May we then take a vote? All in favor of the slate as now presented to you, raise your hand. Anybody on the live stream can also add their votes, please. With that being accepted, I would invite those of you who are joining the boards or who will be on boards to come forward. I think it's going to be a big group. Come on up.
This is how we will conclude our time together this afternoon. Just come on up and take a step. Grab a stair. Very nice. Who else? Come on up. I know that we have at least Judy on the live stream, and if we have any others on that slate who are joining us, we're listening to you as well. Yeah. There you go. There you go. Come on up. Friends and members of Saugatuck Church, we are all called to serve God's people in different ways and places, exercising our gifts and our graces to further Christ's mission of love and justice in the world. Those standing before you today have accepted the call to serve as your lay leaders here at Saugatuck Church, discerning, supporting, and sustaining ministries to which this congregation is being called by God. And so members serving on elected boards. We have joyfully affirmed your gifts and elected you to serve this congregation. With the help of God, do you promise to serve faithfully in the role to which you have been elected, praying routinely, communicating openly, honoring confidentiality, and listening deeply to each other, to the congregation, and to God who calls us? If so, please say, "We do with the help of God." We do with the help of God. And members of the congregation, do you promise to support the work of our elected leaders, holding them in prayer, thanking them, and collaborating with them to help our ministries thrive? If so, please say in the chat or here in the room, "We do with the help of God." We do with the help of God. Will you pray with me? God, our shepherd and guide, bless these lay leaders as they serve Saugatuck Church. Lend them eyes to see Christ in member and stranger, ears to hear your voice in our midst, lips to speak with honesty and kindness, hands to work for justice, and a heart to love your church. Abide with them and sustain them, that they may feel assured of your presence. In the name of Christ we do pray. Let the people say together, amen. 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 All right.
So everybody else can sit, but I want Bruce to stay here for just a moment.
All right.
Okay. I might need two hands, so I might need somebody to hold this for me as well. So I'm going on vacation, but I leave you in such good hands, and I'm going to give Bruce what I'm calling the moderator's survival kit. So if you wouldn't mind holding this for me, Anne, thank you. I have a few essentials here that I think you're going to need, Bruce. Well, we'll talk about that later, not in the sanctuary. Okay, oh yes, the first is your very own copy of the bylaws. Oh. Yes, first thing you should do is revise those, just gonna suggest. The next, now that you have the bylaws, here's your stress ball. Okay, and now you'll know when you need to use it. This is a magic wand. It doesn't really work, but you're going to really wish that it did. Okay, next I have for you, one moment. These are very important. I have Allison's office number. I have Allison's cell phone number. I have Allison's home number, but actually you shouldn't use that. No. What I also have for you, and this is important, this is the list of the past moderators. I want you to keep this. If for no other reason, you can look at it and go, gosh, if they could do it. Sure, I know that I can. But more importantly, know that we are here for you. You are never alone. You have people who have been in this spot who understand a little bit about what it means to be in this role.
You're always the moderator.
You're always a moderator. I'm also going to give you a copy of the directory, because not only are the moderators here to support you, so is everybody here. And it's important to remember that you are not doing this alone. You are not called to do this alone. And we all want you to know that you are supported. One moment. Oh, and most importantly, Anne has something for you as well. I'm going to take all those, just don't put that.
Oh, my.
Yes, you get a shawl.
Oh, wow.
And Kim, maybe you'd like to join
Yes.
me.
I need a bigger, hang on. All right, there we go. Much better.
Does this go to the next moderator?
No, no, no,
This is
that's
yours.
yours.
This is forever.
You're gonna need it.
I still have mine. I still have mine.
So Kim and I
And
will
it was
read
cold.
the prayer that goes with it.
May God's grace be upon this shawl, warming, comforting, enfolding, and embracing. May this mantle be a safe haven, a sacred place of serenity and well-being, sustaining and embracing in good times as well as difficult ones. May the one who receives this shawl be cradled in hope, kept in joy, graced with peace, and wrapped in love.
Blessed be.
Thank you.
So Kim really wanted us to sing, and that is going to be our blessing going out. So if we could invite Liang Feng back to the piano or the organ, there should be hymnals in your pews. Turn to page 453. We'll sing 3 verses of Called as Partners in Christ's Service. It's right here, Cynthia. I stole it from you. There you go. Find a friend if you need to. I invite you to stand on your feet or in your hearts. Liang Feng's going to play us one phrase in, and we haven't done this in a while, so Susie will take it away. Do you have? Yeah. What are you asking? What you should? Yeah. It's just so they know when to start. Because we haven't done this in a while. We'll do 3 verses. 1, 2, 3. Yes.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Called as partners in Christ's service, called to ministries of grace, we respond with deep commitment, fresh new life
declare?
I'm no longer moderator.
Bruce, do you declare this meeting concluded? Yes. Do I hear an aye? Aye. Go forth then in peace to love God and neighbor, and may the love of God and the grace of Jesus Christ and the communion of the Holy Spirit inspire and embolden us as we go. Let the people say amen. Amen.